Welcome back to my channel at The Movie Optimist, where I try and find the silver linings in even the worst of films. Tonight, I just got done watching the newest film, The Black Phone 2, which is a direct sequel to the first one. In this film, it takes place a couple years after the events of the first one, where, again, we follow Finney and Gwen, the two siblings from the first one. Gwen is still having visions of dead kids that are trying to, reach out to her for help because they can't cross over to the other side because their bodies were never found and they need her help. And Finney is in a state of constant trauma where he can't get past what he went through in the first film. He's just so haunted by it, and he's scared that the grabber's going to be around every corner, that it makes him angry, it makes him violent. He's getting in fights in school because he doesn't know how to cope with the grief and the trauma that he went through. He's smoking weed and doing drugs to try and drown it out. And one day, the sister gets a vision from this kid that died at a Catholic youth camp out in the middle of Colorado, and she feels that if her and her brother can go and figure out what happened to the boy, find the body and put it to rest, because the body was never found, which is why this boy is still, in between worlds. He didn't cross over fully after he was murdered because his body was never found. She believes if they go there and face their fears, that her brother, on one hand, can get over the trauma and get back to being a normal kid, and her visions of undead kids will stop. However, it's only once they get there that they realize they're not alone in trying to find these missing kids' bodies, but an undead version of Ethan Hawke's The Grabber arises from the dead and starts haunting them while they're there and trying to stop them from finding these kids. And if that sounds a lot like A Nightmare on Elm Street, you would not be wrong. I have never been more certain in my entire life that somebody was a fan of A Nightmare on Elm Street than I am right now, because holy shit, did Scott Derrickson pay homage to those movies. Same thing with Jason Blum. He had to have known, especially because a couple weeks ago, he went on record saying that he would literally do anything to get the rights to make A Nightmare on Elm Street. He wants to reboot that franchise so bad, and apparently up to this point, he wasn't able to get the rights, so it's kind of funny that he probably turned to Scott Derrickson and was like, can you make a spiritual remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street, but make it in your little Black Phone franchise? And Scott Derrickson was like, yeah, bet I could do that. I could definitely do that, dude. And that's just what it feels like. And I was watching this movie with my friend who wanted to come see this with me, because just off the trailer alone, it looks like A Nightmare on Elm Street. There's literally an undead man that's coming back for revenge after what a bunch of people did to him and killed him in a previous film, like A Nightmare on Elm Street. And he starts haunting these kids in their dreams and killing them in their dreams, where if they die in their dreams, they die in the real world, like in A Nightmare on Elm Street. And there's so many more homages that they pay that I don't want to ruin here because it's part of the fun of going to see this movie, but I was scared my friend was going to hate it for being a blatant ripoff, but he walked out absolutely in love with this movie. And what he said was, yes, they paid homage to A Nightmare on Elm Street, but they didn't outright copy it. Scott Derrickson was clearly a fan of it. He clearly loved that franchise, and he wanted to take it and kind of make it his own. He wanted to put a new spin on it with this iconic villain that he didn't create, obviously, because it was based off of a short story, but he brought to the big screen and ushered in what the Grabber looks like, and he set the tone of Ethan Hawke as the Grabber, and he wanted to make a love letter to A Nightmare on Elm Street within this film, and they 100% succeeded. I have only ever seen the first one. Nightmare on Elm Street wasn't really my thing. I was always a big Halloween guy. Michael Myers is my dude. I love him, but to go with somebody that would literally tattoo Freddy Krueger on his forehead, he hasn't, but he would. He has posters of Freddy Krueger. He has all the box set DVDs. To see that he loved this film so much, it's just a testament to how good of a job Jason Blum and Scott Derrickson did doing this. And the funny thing is, Scott Derrickson didn't even want to make a sequel to The Black Phone, but that movie was made for like $5 million and made like $400 million or something like that. It made a lot of money. And Jason Blum was like, look, I know you had no plans on making a sequel. The ending of the first one was pretty finite, but is there a way in? Is there a way we could do another one because it was so successful? And in a world where there are so many bad horror sequels, Jaws came out, was a masterpiece, and then they came out with Jaws 2, which wasn't that good. You have I Know What You Did Last Summer 2. You have Psycho 2. I mean, hell, even more recently, It Chapter 2, the new one that was done by Andy Muschietti. I loved the first one he did. I loved it so much. And then they came out with the second one, and they ruined it with that awful ending. I mean, it was right there in the pages. All they had to do was just do what they did in the book. And they changed it from the adults beating Pennywise to death and ripping him apart limb from limb, using the trauma and the anger and the hatred they had inside for what he did to them as kids, and putting it all out into violence against him. And they changed it to they defeated him with words. They made fun of him. I feel like they probably thought they were so relevant, tapping into the times that we're in, where like you can't really be a bully anymore, but like it just didn't work, and it was such a letdown. So there are so many paths The Black Phone 2 could have went down that would have just made it so terrible, but they found that one path in the dark that just had a glimmer of light at the end and just made such an exciting, delicious, fulfilling sequel. This movie also ends with a nice bow. It's pretty finite. If they never make another one, it's totally okay. I am so content with this being a 1-2 punch of a franchise. If they find a way to make a third one, I have no doubt they'll do it good, because Scott Derrickson just has his finger on the pulse with this franchise. He knows what makes it work. Everything about this movie, outside of some little things here and there, I just found so satisfying. The settings that they were in. They went from a small basement in a house to a camp in the middle of the woods, which clearly was homage to Friday the 13th. They clearly paid homage to the best parts of Freddy Krueger, who would attack kids in their sleep, but to people who weren't seeing, they would still see the violence play out. They just wouldn't see Freddy Krueger. So if Freddy Krueger was picking a girl up and slamming her into a wall, people in the surrounding area would see that girl get picked up and thrown into a wall. They just wouldn't see him. It would look like she was possessed by a demon. And they brought that over here, and all of the haunting moments in this were incredible. Ethan Hawke coming back as an undead version, a zombified looking version of the Grabber, was super creepy. There was so many beautiful character arcs in this film. There's a lot of heart in this film. A lot of heart, especially with the two siblings, the main lead, their mother. There's a whole arc with her that I thought was really heartfelt and really well done. And I love when you can inject some kind of emotion into a movie like this, because it makes you just care so much more about the people that are in peril, which it being the two siblings here. This movie also isn't lazy, and it has a very important message to say, and that's with trauma, and how when you hold trauma in and you don't release it, it just makes things worse. And the only way to move past trauma is to face it head on, and that is how you finally let go of it and walk away happy. And I really appreciated that they found that very mature message to ingrain in the very fabric of what this movie is. So it's super creepy, it's super haunting. When it's getting violent and hitting the fan and it's getting very Nightmare on Elm Street-y, it is firing on all cylinders. The two main siblings here, I can't forget the name of the main guy, but he was just in How to Train Your Dragon. They're both excellent. I was a little afraid they were going to sideline the kid from the first one and focus more so on the sister, but this is definitely a Batman and Robin type situation. They're both at the forefront here. They both have very important things to do. They're equally as important to the story of why the Grabber is here. Like I said, this movie is not perfect. There is some corny dialogue in this film that really made me cringe. Like, I'm sure I had a face on that was like hurting, but they say things like, "That's totally radical, dude," or, "Oh wow, you got those tickets to that concert? That's mint, bro." Like, they just had this dialogue that kept making me like squirm in my seat, but then I kept having to tell myself it's a period movie. It takes place in the 80s, and that's how kids talk back then. So it was cringy, but it wasn't for the sake of a bad script. They were just trying to be period accurate, so I'm kind of more forgiving on that. One of the things that I'm a little harder on, though, is there is some like action hero one-liners that the two siblings say at different points of the film to the Grabber. One of them being something like, "Hell isn't in flames, it's ice," as they like push the Grabber to the ground on a block of ice. Like, it felt like something Arnold Schwarzenegger's character said as Mr. Freeze in Batman and Robin, and it was just really cheesy, and I felt like they were going for that like hurrah moment, like we're finally seeing the kids fight back, and it's supposed to be like badass, but it just doesn't sound right coming out of a 15-year-old. I don't know, pulled me out of it. But outside of some corny dialogue and the fact that there is a very low body count in this film, it doesn't take away from the fact that there's a lot of violence in it, but there's not a lot of deaths in it, and I was expecting more of a kill count, because Freddy Krueger kills like 5, 6, 10, 15 people in all of his films. Same thing with Michael Myers. This is a much more intimate film, so don't go into it expecting a huge body count from the Grabber. He does kill people. It's just not a lot, and that kind of was a little disappointing for me. But overall, I love this film. It was such a perfect continuation to the first one. It was such a perfect bow tie on this franchise. Like I said, if they make another one, I'm here for it, but I love this as a 1-2 punch. I hope they keep it as this contained 2-part story, because it really is such a beautiful movie. It's such a great, worthy sequel and a finish for this story of the Grabber in the Black Phone series. I can't recommend it enough. I give it an 8.5 out of 10. It is absolutely worth your time. It is the perfect movie for the Halloween season. And yeah, I'd love to know what you guys think. Have you seen this movie already? Were you excited to see it? Has my review swayed your opinion on whether or not you want to see it this weekend? Maybe you're waiting more towards Halloween to see it when it's a little bit more in season, even though it is the season of Halloween, but some people like to go to the movies on Halloween to see stuff like this. What say you? Let's talk about it in the comments down below. And as always, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll catch you next time.